So I'll count it off.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3.
Just let's go.
1, 2, 3, go.
1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Howdy, folks. Welcome back to the rehearsal room. Nick here.
Aaron's here.
This week's episode was actually recommended a while back in our infant days of this show. We're going to be talking about the ever popular satanic panic.
Hide the kids.
Hide the kids, hide the moms, hide the dads, hide everybody, hide the dog.
Get your 12-sided dice ready, everybody.
Yeah, right. Well, Aaron's usually our background guy, so you want to kind of give us a starting off point?
I get what I can from. I mean, again, the satanic panic is in the sense that we're talking about. So you're talking about essentially what, early '80s to about mid '90s-ish.
Yes.
Where it's all coming from, honestly, it starts even further back than that. You know, one of the key architects of it is a guy by the name of Mike Wonke. He certainly popularizes it in Christian churches. But again, this historically, I mean, this has been going on since, quite frankly, the dawn of time. You know what I mean? The world's ills somehow are there's somebody's in control, and it's never the person you want it to be in control.
Hidden cabal of devil worshippers.
Right, and it can be devil worshippers, it can be lizard people, it can be, they morph and change as we go along,
As lizard people want to do.
Clearly, I hope to aspire to be one. But, again, beyond that, I mean, I don't know where. Maybe I wouldn't know where to put it in a context of.
I think in the context of this, it starts off in one of two places. Mm-hmm. In Victoria, British Columbia.
Okay.
With the publishing of Michelle Remembers, and this is a book that is supposed to be kind of a biographical look at the life of Michelle Smith, as told with the help of her therapist, a pastor. I forget his name.
Yeah, I didn't.
Like Arthur something.
Yeah, I didn't write it down.
He actually ended up marrying her, which
very unethical.
If that doesn't set off alarms and all that stuff, well, then you're in for a ride here. Yeah. Because eventually her sessions with this therapist go from the once a week to daily to 8 hours a day.
Right.
And it recounts basically what had happened in Michelle Smith's life before encountering this therapist. She had a miscarriage,
right,
and was kind of going through depressions.
Mm-hmm.
Visited him to see if he could help, and with the use of I forget the actual name, like repressed memory therapy,
according to what this man says,
right, which has been
completely
debunked. Right. So, I'm sure we will have some some
pushback
thoughts,
maybe
on a lot of stuff like this, right?
Yes,
so like repressed memory therapy, which again fully debunked.
Yes.
Basically they concocted this idea of how her miscarriage ended up being sacrificed, a portal was open, and Satan ate her baby, and
that her mother was also part of
like
a cabal, a cult who had been doing this to her when she was younger. This depression, this sadness that you're feeling has little to do with your problems and what somebody has done to you. And now that you've been in my therapy, I've been able to take those repressed memories that you've held back for years, and now you're coming to the realization this is what's been doing it to you. Even though she has no memory of this, other than the ones he apparently has been able to dig out of her that her subconscious has repressed all these years. Even though literally no evidence of any of this happening whatsoever. Right. She goes from being what is ostensibly a regular person going through regular problems, and then has this miscarriage, as you said. She is in a depression of it, which obviously is something that would happen to a lot of people who would lose a child.
Very real.
And then it gets turned into a relationship with her mother that turns into her mother was abusing and using her, which was not the case before,
Yeah.
But using essentially junk science to get this out. And quite frankly, it also becomes a moneymaker. The book is a huge bestseller.
Huge success. In
and they're on every
Canada,
talk show.
In the United States. And this is something that in looking at everything I could find, and a lot of this is informed by another podcast. I should mention this. I got a lot of my information from the You're Wrong About podcast.
Same. Yeah.
Which is hosted by Sarah Marshall and Michael Hobbs at that time, both great reporters and researchers. So, after you listen to this, listen to them.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's really, they go in depth without feeling like you're getting too bogged down in one thing only.
Yeah. So, a lot of this kind of this fear was, for the most part, centralized in North America.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, on that point, one of the other kind of launchers of this moral panic, which is what this was, was in California in Manhattan Beach.
Yeah.
There is a very famous McMartin case.
Yes.
Which was at a preschool where I don't know if it was most of the kids, but a few of those kids were getting questioned by their parents, and they were telling stories of being abused by their caretakers at the preschool.
Yeah, it started out with the one kid who apparently was complaining about having a hard time taking shits.
Right.
Mother got a little worried, took him to the doctor. They had she starts to think maybe there's abuse happening, so on and so forth. The kid talks about that these things are being apparently the kid, one thing to always remember, children, we now know this more so, children want to please.
Yes.
If you give them leading questions, they want to please. They want to answer your questions to give you, and children have a giant fucking imagination. They can come up with all sorts of shit that you and I, we could sit around for weeks and never come up with. Again, the kid starts to speak of many things, including that one of the daycare teachers likes to fly.
Yeah, right.
So the parent freaks out. And again, to the parents, I would just say, I understand as a parent myself, the safety of your children is paramount. That's all you care about as a parent. These things are scary. These things are worrisome. I understand that. But taking a deep breath, and especially the molestation or the violation of your child sexually, that's probably the worst thing you can possibly think of that someone could do to your kid other than literally just murdering them.
Yeah.
So she then goes to the police and it says, hey, I think this is happening. They send out a form letter to every parent in the McMartin preschool, this family-run preschool, and very leading on what, essentially it gets to the point where when you hear from that letter, it's almost like if your kid is breathing and went here, something happened, yes. And these parents, of course, start to freak out, and then they like, well, my kids are doing weird shit. And it's like, are they? Or are you projecting because your son...
Or are they kids?
Exactly.
Right?
Well, it's like... it's almost like the funny bit in Airplane, like, Tommy never has a second cup of coffee at home. It's like, all of a sudden it's like, oh, Jimmy's not eating his green beans. Right. Something must be wrong. Yes. Oh, we got that letter about them being molested. Something
that I know was certainly mentioned in the other podcast, which is very, very true because I have a very young nephew right now of 6 years. So he's in kindergarten. And if he ever gets to listen to this, I apologize profusely, but he also talks about farting and basically shitting all over the place when he's at theaters, so...
I'm 47 and I still like farts and I talk about shitting all over the place.
I mean, so do I, that goes without saying.
That's why we love your nephew.
It starts from the age of 6 up to 47.
I don't know any kid that doesn't find farts funny, pooping, peeing,
all that stuff. And this is what a lot of these kids were talking about.
Exactly.
Right? So... I think like you mentioned, these kids want to please, especially their parents, adults, right?
And leading questions. That's another thing that's very important, something, and I don't mean to interrupt, but just because I think it goes to where you're going. Another thing to remember, and that, again, that podcast did a great job of doing that, because I think those are the things that are interesting. It's like, this doesn't happen in a vacuum. How did we get here? Right. Well, there was a time where we weren't listening to kids. Kids are, you're seen, not heard. We don't listen to that.
Not heard, exactly.
And then this idea of molestation, especially, was debatable even in certain circles. So it was this idea of now it was an overcompensation that says, no, we must listen to children. We must hear what they're saying. But it almost went overboard because it was also the part where it was like, not only must we listen to them, but even if they recant it, they're just telling the lie now. That's the lie.
Exactly.
The recant is the lie. Now they're just too scared.
Right.
But we must listen to children. Everything they say is gospel.
It's funny that we must listen to the children. even though all you're listening to is the accusation and nothing else.
Right. And these kids, I mean, again, the fantastical shit. This daycare had underground tunnels in which they took these children, to these satanic rituals, did these things to them, and on and on. I mean, I believe, if I remember correctly, it wasn't said in the podcast, but I remember hearing about this. By the way, there's also a movie, I believe HBO still has it, about the McMartin trial that was done. Very good. I would recommend it. James Woods is in it. Take that as he may. It was back when we all liked him. But either way, one of the things I remember is like the toilet, if it flushed a certain way, would suck them down into the toilet. It's just like, I understand that kids can come up with these things, and I understand that you care about the safety of your children and you want them. But when they start telling this shit, doesn't your bullshit detector go off at some point and go, how does a toilet, like, especially when you find out that literally every accusation had no evidence whatsoever. None.
And that's something that's very important. And the duration of when this roughly begins,
Absolutely.
like roughly, again, 1982-ish, because that's when the publishing of Michelle Remembers is.
Well, and you have, again, the wonky guy is going around, again, on a smaller scale, claiming to be a former, like, all these things are happening. That's the other weird part. It's like this spider web. They're not connected. They will connect at some point, but they are, it's like 5 people. It's like, when people accuse people of stealing a joke, and they're like, no. It's just everybody had the same thought at the same time.
Thoughts and
stuff.
It's
like all of a sudden, like 2 or 3 people all have this same idea or tangentially, and then they start to meet up, and then other guys start to spider web off of them. You know what I mean? So yes, she's a big part of this, what is hurting between Wonky telling everybody that there's this underground cabal of Satanists that are molesting your children, her saying that your children could have repressed memories, and now this McMartin trial starts to be where these two kind of coalesce.
Right.
And now we're watching people essentially being arrested, losing their livelihood. Real world consequences, not just 2 people telling a story anymore.
There was over 12,000 accusations. A lot of people went to jail. A lot of people saw serious prison time, right? A lot of these cases were not revisited, so there's still people unfortunately suffering from this.
Absolutely. Financially, I mean, what McMartin trial is the most expensive in LA, by the way.
At that time,
still the most expensive trial ever.
Yeah.
I mean, let me look, because I did write it down, because I thought from 83 to 1990.
Wow.
$15 million. The highest, the number is the most of any criminal case in the history of Los Angeles.
That's crazy.
LA, everybody, where everything's more expensive.
Yeah.
And it's still the highest to go after people who did absolutely nothing.
Right.
And they lost their livelihood. In fact, the only reason we even know McMartin is because of this. They just had a fucking daycare where they were taking care of children.
Yeah.
Which,
I do want, and I hope people understand this doesn't need to be said, but child abuse, real thing. It's for sure real thing.
Absolutely.
We're not saying
no,
kids are full of it. No. Of course, it's a real thing, but in these instances, this was what I mentioned before, a moral panic, which the United States has had before.
Oh, God, yes.
Right?
Yes.
We're coming out of the 70s and the 60s,
right,
which the 60s brought us the hippie movement.
Right.
It brought us the Church of Satan.
Well,
right?
And you had culturally, too, is kids are pushing back on parents' everything, including religion. So the pop-up of cults is also very prolific. Late 60s, early 70s, all the way into the 80s. Jonestown is what, 73, 74?
Yeah.
So, those kind of things are... it's kids going, I don't want my parent shit. It's not to say that they necessarily turned away from Christianity, but they wanted their own form of it.
They wanted their own form of basically representation.
Yes.
Right? This is also when kids are starting to become kind of an entity unto themselves as far as being consumers. Right?
Yes.
Because a bunch of them are either going to school, or if they're not going to school, they're getting jobs.
Absolutely.
They have their own money.
Yes.
They're going to movies. And a lot of these movies coming out at the time, you have your Rosemary's Babies, your Exorcist movies.
Absolutely.
Omen, Omen, right?
These are all pushing into it.
It's all kind of coming to a head, basically.
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of things that are pushing back against the norm.
And the old guard is scared.
Exactly.
They're afraid 100%. They're losing power, control.
Yes.
There are those who just simply fear we're getting further away from God.
Right.
And let's not forget, they mean a Christian God only.
God, right.
They don't care about the other gods. It's only their Christian God. And if we're being very honest,
of course.
9 times out of 10, white people mad about the white God that is being taken away from. So they see, essentially, as the song says, the times they are a-changin', and there's a larger group that are freaking the fuck out and saying something must be blamed for this.
Right.
And it happens to have these people who come along and go, I can give you somebody to blame. It's Satanists. And it goes, perfect. That's it. It's ambiguous enough. It's not a singular thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's amorphous. It's like this thing that I can't really point at, but it makes sense in my head. And that must be the decline of America, the decline of everything that we're going through. It makes total sense. And, you know, if you're watching news, which, let's be honest, bleeds, it leads, that sort of thing, it could feel like that when you're seeing, again, all these people, when this really starts to head up. You've lived through the Manson murders. You've lived through David Berkowitz, Jonestown massacre. You know, the church, as you said, the Church of Satan has already been a thing.
You get the Process Church,
all these,
you get the Temple of Set and all these. And it's all happening at a time when there's not the love and sex revolution from like the hippies. It's a different revolution. It almost becomes like a new age revolution.
Yeah.
But because of the fundamentalism in the Christians of North America at that point, they were so scared that they put so much money and effort behind this.
Very much so.
Right.
Very much so.
They did of
Fear
course
cells.
the TV. Yeah. Right. They everyone was suspect. They went on TV and had pretty much everybody speak against this. They went on famously the Geraldo TV show.
And let's not discount that part too. Let's remember there's another thing that's kind of coalescing at the same time. The rise of talk shows.
Yes.
Every talk show knew booking this was fucking ratings bonanza.
Yes,
so
big time.
everybody, this is before we all loved Oprah because she helped everybody. This is when she used to have all the crazies on.
When it was trash TV.
When it was trash TV. Oprah was no different than Phil Donahue, no different than Geraldo, doing the same thing. They could find somebody that was, you know, possessed by Satan, and they were going to have them on. Yeah. Because it sold. It was big ratings. Christians doing the same thing. Every book that talked about this, Wonky's albums, any of this shit made a lot of money for a lot of people. Whether they believed it or not, that's a different story. But the people buying it definitely did. And the people buying into it definitely believed in it.
Yeah. And I think the fundamentalist push behind it also threatened people who normally were already marginalized.
Yes.
Because in some cases, you know, some of the accused were either, you know, people who were black, people who were gay, right? And kind of casting the satanic,
it was a very wide net,
right? Like,
they used satanic to go after many other things.
Big time, right? And so, like, not only are you saying that these people are not, you know, that they're already reprehensible by, quote, normal standards, normal societal standards, but now because they have these things going on in their lives where one might be gay, one might be black, or whatever the case might be, that's kind of like double jeopardy, right?
God,
where, like, now let's really go after this.
Well,
which, again, it's the white people scared of this new thing.
Absolutely.
Right?
And to your point, let's not forget, too, how many of these people, like so many of these movements do, they start out with this idea of, like, we got to protect children because there's this thing.
Yes.
Okay, some people can get behind it.
Yeah.
But then suddenly guys start showing up, we've got to protect our children, especially from the Jews. And you're, wait a minute.
Right.
Or we got to separate ourselves from people of color. You're like, And you start to get all these people that show up, and they start to, some show up and just, they let that shit come out a little later.
Well,
they were always feeling, yes.
Yeah, so
they move the bar, and eventually you start to, that net, as you said, gets wider and wider. First we were worried about Satanists, now it turns into homosexuals, Catholics, you know, Islam, you know, on and on and on. Schools teaching evolution. You're like, whoa! I thought we were dealing with a Satanist cabal. What's going on here? But again, these people use these movements to also take their own version and turn it into it. You see it in everything. Yeah. I remember even like the Tea Party. There were guys I knew who were like, yeah, I'm Tea Party. Yeah. I want my taxes used better. And then all of a sudden guys showed up, especially from the black guy in the office. Oh, shit. Movement's over, everybody. You know what I mean?
Like, what kind of tea is that? I don't want it.
Right. And it's just like, no, I'm not part of this group anymore. Right, you know? Right. And I think that's something interesting too, is where they start and where they end is always very interesting, because it seems like it's all this good intention shit. Yes. And then in the end, it's just some guy's weird view on the world, and his 9 times out of 10 racist or some sort of ist that is attached to this.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah, and the United States has definitely not been a stranger to these types of panics.
No.
Famously, anybody who paid attention to politics knows about McCarthyism.
Yes.
Because that also deals a lot with this type of public scare.
Oh yeah. Communism eventually got rolled into the Satanist part too.
Exactly, right? So, and when they send out their message, they're sending it out to a populace who's maybe not as educated, maybe doesn't have the resources that some of these other folks do. So they are a little bit more needy and a little bit more prone to believe and not research, because they don't have, again, the resources to research.
I would also say, and again, I'll try not to be shitty about this, but
Sure.
These people are also people who are much more prone to believe that faith equals fact.
Yes.
If I believe it
yes.
or I'm told those things, then therefore they are. There's no reason to question. There's no reason to look
100%.
further.
Yes.
And again, in their defense for some, when people come along with junk science, or some comedian comes along who gets you to laugh and then tells you he used to be an ex-occultist, well, how do I research any of that shit?
Right.
I don't care how much money I have.
Right.
And we're talking, again, the evergreen statement of this is pre-internet, everybody. But I mean, it is.
Even what's funny, and sorry to interrupt.
No, please.
Even with the advent of the internet, we have QAnon, which is essentially the moral scare of these times.
There you can draw a direct line from this to QAnon. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
In lots of ways.
Exactly. Right. There's some leftovers.
There's no satanic panic anymore in QAnon. Now it's Hollywood elites that are draining our children's blood to get the indichrome or whatever the fuck they call that thing. You know what I mean? It's the same thing.
It's essentially
you just
the same
repackage it. You sell these people the same bullshit every time. 100%. You just put it in a whole new package.
Yes.
That's all it is. And somebody is benefiting financially from all of this.
Of course.
All of this.
I mean, because there are... what do they call them? Not just leeches, but they're called something. Obviously, like the snake oil salesman. Back to the McCarthyism.
Please.
Previously to that, we had the witch burnings, right? Like
sure.
the whole Salem witch trials and stuff like this. Basically the Crusades.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this would necessarily be the start of everything, but I did mention this to you. The blood libels that people supposedly had because of the Jewish conspiracy to take over Catholics way back in the day.
Yeah.
Right. So even then, they vilified an entire group of people just because it was new, it was scary to them. They didn't fully understand it, and most likely, and more frankly, they did not want to understand them.
Oh no!
Right? Where
it's easier to hate.
100%, right? It's new, so therefore I do not like it.
Yeah, we fear change. I mean, that's a human quality in general. It's aside from the religious aspects of any of this, this is a human quality. This is just what we do as human beings. We scare ourselves over, ironically, things that probably will never happen to us, as opposed to the things that will happen. The people who are people who own pools should be far more worried about their kid drowning in them than they should be worried about their kid getting shot in a school.
Right.
It's not to say the other one can't happen, and it's not to say we shouldn't take measures to make sure neither of them happen.
You're more than likely going to fall into that pool.
Absolutely. Statistically, for people who are so worried about things, by the way, if you drive here in LA, your chances of getting into a car accident far higher than just about anything else. But fear sells, and there are many who profit from it. And these people know it. And religion has been one of many things that has profited from fear and using it.
The purveyors of selling fear.
Through
and through.
Absolutely, because it sells. And there are people, look, there's also, let's be honest, there's a sense of better than also.
Of course, yes.
That's what the outside world is dealing with. Yes. Not me. I don't deal with that because I'm better than, because I've accepted Jesus Christ as my personal Savior.
Right.
It is interesting. I'm sure maybe if you researched it, it would be there in some places. But I don't remember hearing these kind of things in Hinduism, the Jewish faith. These kind of scares in this way. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's something about Christian religion that really uses it. And again, I think for the most part, even if the people who were instrumental in it, those who used it, it was about power. They saw this country changing in a way they believed they would not have the power to keep what they wanted.
There is an opportunity to benefit from selling these people as fear.
Absolutely.
And they took it.
Absolutely. Yeah, some just simply to make money, others to keep the power that they needed.
Yes.
And that they knew could go away tomorrow if they were exposed.
Right. And it's some of these accusations that people made and that were made of people it's not to say that they didn't happen, because in the cases where there was some sort of physical abuse, be it sexual or otherwise, I'm pretty sure, and from what I did look into, the people who did the abusing used the fact that this type of fear mongering was already present. And so therefore they did the abuse,
right.
Already shitty.
Sure.
Disavow 100%.
Yeah.
But then the abuser also maybe told their victim, well, I'm doing this because of the devil.
Yeah. Oh,
even though when the initial abuse happening was nothing to do with that. Right? Well, it was more just for gratification.
Yes.
Than anything else, than ritualistic power over somebody else.
Absolutely.
Or what have you.
No, the devil gets blamed for a lot of shit that he
exactly,
has no
right?
fucking part of.
It was weird too. I saw this statistic where, like, when they went to the UK and they started talking about it there, surprisingly enough, after the fact, after the initial speaking of this ritual abuse,
right?
More and more cases started popping up, which not a surprise that it wasn't happening before. But after, because more people were like, oh, okay, so that kind of falls under the definition of satanic ritual abuse.
Right.
Therefore, it happened to me as well.
Well, I think that's part of it, too, is, again, people seem to think that, wow, there seems to be a rise in child abuse. No, there's no rise.
No, exactly.
People are willing to now talk about it. This is like what you hear with people who go like, oh, geez, all of a sudden everybody's gay. No. Gay has been around for a long time.
It's been
autism has been around for a long time.
Right.
It's not an increase in them; it's an increase of our knowledge of it.
There you go.
You know,
perfect.
Many of these women who may or may not have been burned at the stake at Salem, we may find out tomorrow, just had things like, I don't know, PMS. I mean, let's be honest, we probably had a thought that somebody didn't like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's the part where
they were just tired of their dude's bullshit,
right?
You know,
or just how many of them, quite frankly, had autism.
Of course.
Oh, they're acting strange. We got to burn them at the stake.
Right.
So our misunderstanding of so many things also leads to our panic of so many things.
Yes.
So, like, again, to the podcast that you and I both listened to, I thought that was interesting. It's like, our attitude towards child molestation at one point in certain psychology circles were things like, well, like Freud, who, again, talk about debunked, it was like, oh, well, that couldn't happen. Dads don't do that sort of thing. So it's repressed memories of other things. It's other trauma in your life, and you're making it into that. And then there was this, like, to save the patriarch kind of thing, as she mentioned, where it's like, well, some people were even blaming, well, women are going back to work now.
Right.
And they're not fulfilling their, and I say this in air quotes, their womanly duties to their husband enough. And, his daughter's going through puberty. Who could blame the man? Like, really? But this was a world we were actually living in. And by the way, not in the 1870s. This is 1970. These are things
1980s.
Yeah,
Just a hop, skip, and a fart away.
And these psychological feelings. And again, these weren't shared by everyone, but they were still published. These are talking. So you're talking in the late 60s, early 70s. They're saying these things. So again, what you're seeing is the people are going, when they start to learn that is all horse shit, and children are being molested 9 times out of 10, by the way, by someone who's very close as a relative.
Right.
Uncle Touchy isn't just a funny thing to say. It's because it happens. So these things are, like, to say is, as we start to learn more and more of these truths, we started to overcorrect a little bit, as I said before. So it was believe everything these children say. But now you look at psychology and the way they look at these sort of things, and we are much more educated on that. We understand why these things happen. We know how to question kids in a way where we don't feel like we're leading them, so that we know when they're telling the truth, when they're telling a lie. You also have corroborative evidence, so on and so forth. But
also looking at physical evidence, because a big thing was in a lot of these accusations, there was no actual physical evidence.
None. And even some of that was pseudoscience, that some doctors said there was physical, right? Oh, well, I hate even saying this because it's so disgusting, but wasn't there one where she's saying that the doctors were saying, like, if the butthole retracts, that means that he or she has been what are we? What scientists are doing this?
One of the accusations was like they used peanut butter and as lubricant, and then they go into the kitchen area of the little preschool area. And lo and behold, peanut butter, because little kids don't like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Absolutely hate it. There's only one reason to have peanut butter at a daycare. Right. Satanic ritual.
Exactly, right? So, of course, they fucking throw the book at them, and meanwhile, these fucking kids are just making up stories, and the belief held by the adults is more of, well, this can't happen to my child.
Yes.
Therefore, I will use literally
Yes.
the fucking wrath of God
Yes.
against this evil. Right?
Allow my fear to overtake my reason and look for
Yes.
actual evidence. And this even happened in policing.
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
the other
yeah.
part. It's like, I understand an irrational parent who wants to protect their child, but as a police officer who is supposedly bound by a duty of finding evidence in order to make these things happen and show, I mean, literally in the McMartin trial, okay, so what are they doing? Oh, they're pulling me down in these underground tunnels. Okay, well, let's go to the building and find the underground tunnels. Guess what we don't find? Any underground tunnels.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, their biggest piece of evidence from what I remember hearing was they found a black robe from one of them. Turned out to be their graduation robe.
Yes, the graduation robe. Yeah.
Like, are you fucking kidding me?
There was another one where like the kids had grandparents, and the grandparents had black robes.
Right.
They had candles.
Yes.
And they had a Christ crucified on an upside down cross.
Right.
Well, that is a valid cross. That's the cross of St. Peter.
Yes.
Right. And the parent, the grandparents were just this weird religious sect.
Right.
Nothing to do with Satan.
Right. Ironically, right? They were Christian in their mind. They were just as Christian as the people who were coming after them.
Yes. Yeah. I liked also another example of some of the accusations was in Texas, the Texas case where
Oh God, yeah.
there's apparently the teachers who were doing the abusing and all the satanic stuff went to the zoo, kidnapped a baby gorilla and cut off one of its fingers, which they then bled and used the finger in their rituals.
And this is a story told by a child to the police and his parents.
Police, yes. So then what happens is the people who get accused get arrested and blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, there is no fucking zoo in that town in Texas.
Which should have been the number one thing that let them go.
Number two, no baby gorilla. And more importantly, no baby gorilla missing a finger. Right.
Which seems like those would be easy things to find.
Yes.
A zoo, B, a baby gorilla, and three, or that was AB
2.5.
Yeah. AB3, everybody. And C is the fact they would be missing a finger.
Right.
Like, is Texas full of zoos with baby gorillas that are missing fingers,
Yeah.
and they're just too hard? Again, that's the I get a parent going, oh my God. I get a kid saying that bullshit story. What I don't understand are when police go, okay, number one, there's no zoo. Number two, by the way, forget number 2 and 3, because once I tell you there's no zoo, that eliminates 2 and 3.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So we're done here, everybody. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, we can keep looking, but if we can't find this, then how does that lead us to the other part?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. So more and more, these reports and these accusations get put into the public eye because of, again, like Aaron said,
It bleeds, it leads. It's
it bleeds, it
sensationalism.
leads. Not just the news, but like the TV that was happening at the time was trash TV.
Oh. I mean, 2020 probably wouldn't exist if it weren't for that shit.
Totally. Yeah. So a lot of these cases later did get revisited. In some cases, some of these accusations were overturned. Some people were definitely let go, but like I said, over 12,000 people got accused, and there's a big percentage of that is still in jail or in prison for these accusations.
And by the way, those stigmas don't go away.
They don't.
Even if you've been released, even if you've been exonerated, the only reason we know the McMartin family is because of this now.
Right.
And there's nothing that will erase that, because that's what they're known for.
Yeah.
Sadly, because they didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of this did end up getting pushed against the popular youth culture.
Oh, yes.
Right? So at some point, they did turn their focus at anything they did not understand, which at that time was a growing interest in maybe hard rock, heavy metal.
Yep.
Right?
Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons. There was a group called BAD, BADD, which stood for Bothered About Dungeons and Dragons, which is it's fucking stupid. Right?
Well, it's also best. We're just bothered.
We're bothered. Yeah.
Well, you started an organization. Are you angry? No, just
yeah,
bothered.
Right.
Just
but
perturbed.
I guess didn't make a good T-shirt.
Yeah, right. That's really what. Come on, they just wanted. They came up with the acronym first.
Right.
It's obvious.
Like, how many T-shirts, motherfucker? We have to come out with a good acronym, right?
Shit.
Yeah.
2 D's.
Yeah, exactly.
Who the hell spelled this, Aaron?
So yeah, so at some point, they do turn their sights on music, heavy metal being one of the targets, and I do want to say this whole era of the Satanic Panic does get conflated a bit with what happens later on with the PMRC.
Yeah.
There are some people involved in both.
Oh, sure.
Right? But they are two different events, two moral panics that happen at roughly the same time.
Very much so.
You know, we will be having an episode on the PMRC at a later time and date. But because, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I see it kind of like what people say about the Republican Party. Not everybody in the Republican Party is a racist, but if you're a racist, you're probably a Republican.
Yes.
And it's kind of like, not everyone in the PMRC was down with the Satanic Panic, but if you were down with the Satanic Panic, you probably were right along with the PMRC 100%. And what they wanted to do with the Filthy 15 and so on and so forth.
Yeah. You know, so there are parts that will kind of overlap in both of these instances. The fact that they started going against Dungeons and Dragons, I remember that kind of specifically too, because Dungeons and Dragons was something I was getting into mainly for the artwork, which a bunch of devils, a bunch of dragons, is fucking cool, right? Yeah. But because these also came with versions of like pentagrams, and that's what they were talking about.
Well, and you cast spells, and you pretend to be somebody you're not.
Exactly, right?
You know, and it's just
it's not the Christian God, right?
Well, and then and another person who fits into this this again, these people start their own, but they all come together. Another one is Jack Chick. The famously does what they are called chick tracks.
Yeah.
They sound hot, but they're not. But essentially, they are cheaply done comics for Christians to do. Very much, as I read, and made a lot of sense. He's obviously inspired by, what do they call it? The Tijuana
Bible.
Yes. Which are, you know, these comics are not like what you would buy at a comic book store. They're they're rectangular, and you open them and you read it. And
they're really raunchy.
I wish.
Right.
But, you know, it's just, you know, Jack Chick comes along and he starts selling these comic books. And he's using a lot of the people who claim to be former occultists as inspiration for these things. And, yes, he has one on Dungeons & Dragons. By the way, for those of you who don't know this, I would recommend, because I think they are pretty entertaining as maybe a secular person, Jack Chick has a website you can go to. You can look at every one of his Chick tracks for free and go through all of them. They are categorized by certain things that he hates. They're very interesting to look at, especially from other eyes. Let's put it that way. And he has one specifically on Dungeons & Dragons. It implies that essentially these kids play Dungeons & Dragons. I remember seeing this actually, too, when I was in junior high, because they were real big. I went to a Christian junior high, and these things were everywhere. Yeah. And the whole thing is these kids are playing Dungeons & Dragons, but there's a lady present at this Dungeons & Dragons. She's like a mix between Elvira and Vampira.
Hell yeah.
Who, yeah, well, again.
Sign me up.
They had, believe me, some of these chick tracks were doing the opposite for me. But the idea is that one of the girls at the party is like really good at Dungeons and Dragons, so she seduces and recruits her into the real occult that does real spells, and even claims that her father was giving her shit. Obviously does not say shit, but about Dungeons and Dragons. So she cast a spell on her father that would make him do whatever he wanted to, and he did, and bought her over $200 worth of Dungeons and Dragons accoutrements.
Nice.
You know,
nice.
Oh yeah. It goes into this whole thing, you know, like
so he becomes cool, is what you're saying.
That's what it sounds like to me. I mean, I wish I could tell me that spell, please.
Yeah, right.
You know. But again, they are not writing these things like this is fake. They are writing this like this could happen to your child.
Yes.
A friend of hers kills herself because she's gotten too deep into all of this, and when she cries about it, the Satan lady is like, "What's your problem? This is about becoming the greatest elder you could ever." You know, it's crazy to read these things, but these were instrumental in getting the message, especially of the Satanic Panic, out. You can buy one. At least these are today prices. I believe you can get one for 22 cents. You can get 500, I think, for like $30.
Wow. Yeah.
So he was selling these things super cheap. Every church is buying them, and they're passing them out to everybody, especially the evangelical side.
Yeah.
Because that's what's interesting for me is I essentially, for the most part, grew up Catholic, which is to say we went to Catholic church. We were not in any way reverential when it came to, you know, Catholicism or hardcore in any way. I was never really exposed to any of this. The Satanic Panic would have been stuff that I would have been aware of to a degree, like tangentially, probably saw 2020, probably heard little things, certainly heavy metal music, you know what I mean? But my junior high that I went to was a Christian school. Now I was around evangelicals. That's when I became much more aware of this kind of moral majority, satanic panic, or the things that some stuff that I loved, including when I started to get into heavy metal, was going to send me to hell.
It was weird too because a lot of the criticisms that the moral majority, and that's a great, was very detailed and descriptive, and in many ways a lot better detailed than what the supposed Satanists were actually using, right?
Yeah, right.
They knew all of the rituals, the moral majority did,
yes.
right? And it's like, how do you know all of this shit that happens? Like, if you're so fucking aware of all of these details,
right,
how are you not better at finding it? Why is it still secret and hidden?
And to your point, like the Mike Warnke guy.
Yeah.
This guy claims to have been in charge of 3 different occult Satanist cabals in the Los Angeles area at one time and was the headmaster. Now, mind you, apparently this happened all in 9 months before he joins the Navy. I mean, it's just such a bullshit story. Anyway, he becomes the headmaster, if you will, of these 3 things and admits to things like torture, rape, child molestation, all these things that his cabal is doing and that he is a part of. I'm sorry, why is he not in jail?
Right.
He shows up to your church and goes, but I accepted Jesus Christ. And you all go, well, then cool, he's totally forgiven. Listen, I get that your religion says God forgave him, but there are fucking laws in this country.
Yeah.
He
On this planet,
he admits to murdering people. And yet they still, now, he has since been completely debunked, ironically, by a Christian coalition that went after him. I can't remember their name. I think I did write it down because I thought that was so interesting. That they went after him because they started to see. Well, one, it's funny because they're like dominoes. Once they start to knock down one, it starts to knock down a lot of the others.
Sure.
And with him especially, like a lot of that was the idea that they started Cornerstone magazine. That's who they were.
Yeah.
They started to find people that were associated with him and start to look into him and find out you're full of shit.
Right.
And as they start going down the line, he's kind of the last one to fall when they look into him and say, you can't back up any of the things that you say. And they interview his, by the way, 4 wives.
Wow. Okay.
Married 4 times, cheated on almost all of them, and beat the hell out of a couple of them. One we absolutely know. The others have implied. Because that's what Christians do.
Because he's a stand-up fucking guy, right?
Right. Well, sadly, literally, because he did stupid stand-up comedy. He's horrible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so he was a grifter. Ultimately, this guy was a grifter. Which, if you want to tell stories, that's fine. But when you start to profit off it, and more importantly, people are being put in jail because of the lies that you have told, now you need to go away. And sadly, he is not where he once was in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. But there are still churches that bring him on to still tell his bullshit stories.
Yeah.
And that kills me the most. He's been completely debunked. All of these have, and yet, here we go. And the other one, if I may, real quick.
Sure.
So many of these people who come on with this moral high ground and want to tell you about all the bads of the world, every one of them get knocked down. There's another one by the name of John Todd. The Chick Track guy used him in a lot of his occult, his stories he would use to do his occult Chick Tracks. Come to find out, the guy, by the way, already had some previous problems, but nobody knew about those. But eventually the man served 30 years in jail for molesting his karate group, 2 people on there, and raping a 16-year-old girl. While he's telling the country there's a satanic cult that is trying to take away your children and do all these things.
Yeah.
The wonky guy, like I said, married 4 times, beat on his wife, stole money from his own charity, all these other things. And you just but you're trying to tell the world that you're trying to save us, and all you're doing is you're a grifter and nothing more. Yeah. It doth protest a little too much for some of these guys.
And and this one is because it's such a popular one, because the United States here, where Aaron and I reside, it is, for the most part, a country that loves parading its kind of religious roots, even though the country is not itself, right? It's just such a weird thing to grow up in a country, to live in a country that, for all intents and purposes, escaped that, right?
Literally, that was what they said they did.
That's what they sold us on. I mean, that's on the pamphlet.
Although now we're finding out too, it's pretty much just a cult leaving another cult coming to here and wanting to start another cult.
Right. So it's weird that they use this big bad of the devil, and then include everything else. Much like Aaron, I was brought up Catholic, being a Mexican guy. My family was very Catholic, but I did find out about the satanic panic as it was going on.
Okay.
Our elementary school and our junior high school had the chick tracks
Oh, interesting.
in
Okay.
there, even though these are not religious schools,
Right,
They're
right.
just regular public schools.
I understand. Yeah.
But they carried everything that you could have at a school. They had it.
Okay.
Right? And
Well, at the prices he's charging, why wouldn't you?
exactly, right? And in some cases, these were given away to schools too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
right?
Oh sure.
Because it's a tax
It's so
write-off.
cheap. Yeah, absolutely. It's so
Right.
cheap. Churches drop them off.
I remember one of the more, I guess, funny aspects of this was when they started blaming musicians and using like
The backward masking. Yeah.
right? So there's I know I've mentioned this name before. His name is Juan Gabriel, one of the more popular Mexican artists.
Mm-hmm.
He came out with an album around this time, like in the mid 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in elementary school, and it was rumored that this album had back masking on
Oh,
it.
interesting.
And the only way we knew about it was because it was on TV, Channel 34, whatever that Univision is. And they mentioned this album from this guy has backmasking, and it's telling you, join the devil. whatever. And I think they targeted him because Juan Gabriel, very popular musician and singer, but he's also very, very gay.
Yes.
Or was actually when he was alive.
Mainly closeted though, right? I mean, people knew, but you
It
didn't
was
talk
like
about
a
it, kind
known
of thing.
secret.
Yes,
yeah, right.
I got you.
So the fact that
Almost like Little Richard.
yes, very much so. So I think that's one of the reasons that because of this religious moral
Sure.
panic was happening, and the Catholics couldn't be left out of the
Well,
moral panic.
no.
They had to join in. So it was funny because at that time my family had that album on
Right.
cassette. And I remember they were telling me you can't listen to this, and I'm like, yeah, I don't listen to that anyway, like I don't like that album,
Right.
But yeah, it was that's the one instance where that touched my family, the big satanic panic of the 80s.
Okay.
That's how it entered the Rocha household.
Because I certainly remember hearing about that. Like Judas Priest, supposedly,
Sure, yeah.
Stained Glass, I think is the album that it's on, which is ironic too, because I believe it's Diamonds and Rust, which was the cover,
Yeah.
right? It's like, talk about hiding it. My God,
a
and
good
of course, well, yeah, right. Like it's not even our own song. We're gonna put it in a Joan Baez cover. Like what the fuck, But I remember too. It's like, yeah, the prosecution goes. And again, these are parents whose kids kill themselves. It's a fucking tragedy.
Yes.
They've lost the thing they love the most. They're fucking confused. They don't understand. They want to blame someone. And the last thing you want to do is blame the kid who actually did it because, it is his fault.
Right.
Or maybe look inward and go, how have we been treating little Johnny?
Right.
Were we asking the right questions of little Johnny? Well, wait a minute. You mean I can point at this British rock group and tell them, and more importantly, who have money, and we can go blame them?
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. Oh, we're crusaders now.
Right.
And it's just like, I remember the Judas Priest one, it was like, well, if you play this, they say, shoot or something. It says to kill. And then the defense would be like, really? Because when we play it backwards on this song, we hear cherry ice cream. How come we didn't eat cherry ice cream?
Right.
The Ozzy one was another,
Suicide Solution.
Exactly.
Yeah,
which, by the way, you had to play Suicide Solution backwards
Which
to hear. And
also, it's an anti-suicide song.
yes.
And that's what they're going for, right?
Yes. But now, I will say, when the guy says, he says, get the gun, shoot, shoot, shoot. That's right. That was well, when you listen to it, now, we also know this. If I tell you what you're going to hear before you hear it, you will hear it.
Of course.
But if I let you listen to it on your own, but I will say, I've listened, I'm a huge Ozzy guy. We've talked about him several times on this podcast. I does sound kind of like he says it, but like Ozzy says, I didn't say get the gun, number one. Number two, shoot what?
Right.
Just because I said shoot. And I even look at Dennis Leary had the big joke about that, that's a horrible marketing thing. Why would you tell your fans to kill themselves?
Right.
Why wouldn't you instead put in there, go buy our album again, buy more of our album, show up to our show, buy a shitload of our merch? That's what you should be doing.
Yep.
Having your fans off themselves is a horrible way to become a popular band.
Well, these people are too outraged to have any sort of logic or reason.
Absolutely.
Right? Because ultimately they're pointing at the dark and saying, that's what we're scared of. We don't know what's in there,
right?
But it's scary, and we're going to protect you against it, regardless of whether we know what it is or not.
Absolutely, right. And it continues. I think When I truly became aware of the idea of a satanic panic that was leading into these things, I do remember bits of the McMartin trial, but not understanding it because I was just too young. The one that I think, and I'm sure you know, I know you know of this, maybe you also had this. So in high school, I got bits and pieces. I had like a Bible teacher. Every year we had Bible class. I think it was my sophomore year. We had the Bible teacher who went over the rock bands that would lead us to hell. You know, I remember because myself and the girl's name was Greta. She was a big metal fan like I was. In fact, she was the first person who gave me Seasons in the Abyss and made me a Slayer fan forever.
Nice.
We were in the back of the class together, and he starts doing the old go-tos. AC/DC. They call themselves that because it means switching sexually. And I remember thinking, have you listened to AC/DC? Let me put my love into you, babe. Giving the dog a bone, I think their sexuality is pretty set in stone. But okay, you know, Kiss, Knights in Satan's Service, and you're going, really? Because they're the most pathetic rock band I've ever seen. There's nothing satanic about them. Right. But I just remember her and I sitting in the back as he keeps going along, and then we go, Deicide. He'd be like, oh, well, that's a new one. Let me write that Deicide. And then Cannibal Corpse. Oh, good Lord. You know, and he's writing that down. And then finally we get to a point where we probably said two or more. Oh, I think we have enough. We're good here. You know, it's like, wow, how it's moved on from your AC/DCs and your Led Zeppelins. I mean, he was mad about Led Zeppelin because of the Lemon song.
Oh, wow.
Let the juice run down your leg. Everybody, do you see how this is going to take you to hell?
Yeah.
Another one, and again, this is a Catholic kid who didn't really grow up religious, now being around evangelicals who really take this shit seriously. Yeah. I remember a teacher who was a photo teacher, is what I had him for, but I think he did it, like every teacher had like 4 or 5 different classes because it was a small little Christian school. But I remember him going off on Star Wars because of its take on Eastern religions.
That's crazy.
Yeah, well, especially now when I think about it, as I've learned as I've gotten older, when you realize his inspiration is from what is his name? He brought the hero's journey and
Campbell.
Yes,
yeah, Joseph Campbell,
who, by the way, it's not about Christian or not Christian. It's about world religions and how they're connected and so on and so forth. Like, so when Lucas is supporting a book about the hero's journey, like, there's nothing, he's not putting any Hinduism in there.
Right.
He's just putting religion in general in there.
Yeah.
But so it's so weird, you know, and you got like, wow. And he meant it. Like, he meant it. Like, you should not be watching Star Wars. Yeah. You know, my wife's sisters wouldn't let their kids watch Harry Potter. But they did let them watch Lord of the Rings. So again, none of this ever makes sense. But the one, and to come back around, the one, and I think this is one. I think we were probably going to hit this anyway. The one that really hit me the hardest was the West Memphis 3.
Oh, definitely, yes.
This is when I felt like I felt it, when I understood it the most.
Yeah.
Because that angered me in ways I didn't understand this could happen to people.
Well, because I think people like you and me saw that happening and said, well, that could have been us.
To a degree, yeah, absolutely. I mean, thank God we lived in Los Angeles in a way. You know what I mean? Like, because I saw Damien, I saw the other kids and went, well, they look like me. They look like my friends.
Yeah.
I like Metallica.
Right.
Which, again, is also very weird that they thought that was satanic.
Metallica, of all the bands, of course.
You know, I mean, it's another one where I'm sitting there at home going, what about Slayer? I mean, Jesus Christ. They literally call out the devil, you know?
Yeah.
So, that one, that's when I really started to understand what the satanic panic could do to, especially in smaller communities.
Yeah.
You have 3 boys that have lost a large portion of their life based on nothing.
On accusation.
But fear.
Yeah.
But fear, because something so horrific happened to these 3 young boys. Somebody had to go away for it, and nobody cared if the kid who liked heavy metal, and let's not forget this too, the poor kid who loved heavy metal and called himself Damien went away.
Yeah.
Nobody gave a shit because he could be thrown away. Yep. And that was scary, and that was upsetting. And yeah, you're right. Because of them being heavy metal fans, looking like me and my friends, I took it more personally in that way, for sure. It's sad. I mean, again, it's a human trait. It's not that I didn't care about it before, but you do care about things a little more when they feel like they're directed at you.
Of course,
you know?
Of course.
But that's the last big one that I can really remember too. I'm sure there were others, but that felt like one of the last gasps of the satanic panic that we're talking about. You know what I mean? And that's certainly one that hit me the hardest.
I think, because I honestly believe that for all intents and purposes, this version of the Satanic Panic just morphed into the whole QAnon thing. Right?
Yes.
Right?
I'm just, if we're staying in this little area here, yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
QAnon, again, direct line.
So I think you're absolutely correct about the West Memphis 3. When that started happening, I kind of sat back and said, this is the fear that is moving this. Right?
Yeah.
This is 100. Because at that point, I remember going to my parents and asking them, hey, you've always told me to pray against this bad thing.
Sure.
But in your lifetime, how many times did this bad thing ever make itself present?
Right.
Like, when did you ever see the devil?
Right.
Or whatever?
Right. No, I know it.
And the answer was a great big resounding 0, right?
Yes.
And it was like, okay, so I get you have to protect yourself and all this shit about against dangers and blah, blah, blah.
There are dangerous people out there. There are people that want to hurt you.
100%.
They are not Satanists. They are not even evil. Their acts are evil.
In fact,
many of these people just have real mental problems.
In fact, a lot of these people are Catholics and Christians.
It turns out to be, yes.
What
at least in name only.
And yes, right? So, when my parents couldn't really give me that answer, and then I'm seeing, again, this fear manipulate the accusations thrown against the West Memphis 3.
Yes.
It was just like, okay, well, something's not adding up, and I need it to add up because I want to grow up in a place where if you're going to say something and accuse somebody, you have to be 100% like on it.
Especially the murder of 3 children.
Yes, right.
Like this isn't jaywalking here.
It's not something light. It's children being affected. Children causing, first of all, supposedly the cause of the murders, right?
Yes.
So if it's going to be that serious and that severe, we need to be 100% certain that this is exactly what happened. And they weren't.
No.
Right? They weren't. In none of these cases, in none of the 12,000 cases, was it ever found that one of these children was ever abused in a way that had anything to do with Satanism, devil worshiper, secret demonic cabals hidden, right? Which, again, if they exist, let me join. Not for the abusing.
No.
I just want to go to pizza parties and shit like that, right?
Right.
But
by the way, if you look at certain Satan groups as they are, like, I don't imagine these people can agree on where to go eat.
Exactly.
Let alone,
right?
like, I mean, to your point, like, one of the ladies, it was in New Jersey that got accused of this. I know you heard this story.
Oh,
yes,
too. Yes.
She was accused of taking 30 children at a time, having them undress and essentially romp around each other in grease
and piss and
piss and poop and everything else. And as she said in her defense, do you have any idea how hard it is to get 30 kids to take all their clothes off and then put them all back on before anyone notices that you've done anything?
Try doing it with one kid. Hours.
Believe me, I have a father of 3. Trying to get a kid dressed in the morning just to get to school. Are you fucking kidding me? Especially when they're that young.
Yeah.
So it's just, you said it. It's not so much, accusations are one thing, but they're so unfounded. And let's be honest, certainly with the West Memphis 3.
Yes.
The fallout that comes from this is on all sides. Number one, more importantly, the most important thing, in my opinion, despite how I feel, the number one thing, the kids who have been murdered, we still do not know who did it.
Right.
Their parents have no sense of justice. Their parents have no sense of a closure. If you can get closure in something like this, I don't know. Whatever trust they had of societies and it's things like policing and judges, that's eroded.
Yep.
So now you've heard that. 3 people went to jail for the better part of their lives that they will never get back.
Yeah.
All this fallout, and by the way, the real person who did this is still free to this day.
Still out there, yeah.
And that, to me, is sometimes the worst part about it. You were so determined to throw away these 3 kids based on their like of music and how they dressed because they were different, and especially in a small town, different. Okay, they got to go away. And someone's got to pay for this murder because this is horrific. It can't happen here. How many times do we ever hear that, right? It can't happen here. It can happen anywhere, everybody.
Right.
And sometimes a small town is the easiest place to do it.
That's one thing that I think gets compounded by it being not so much an American thing, but Americans sure did hyper-focus and hyper-realize these accusations, right? So, like you said, someone has to pay.
Yeah.
And when it was out of the mouths of the children and it got into the hands of the adults, I don't know if this was because so they wouldn't look foolish, but they fucking went into it wholeheartedly, right?
Well,
they went into it like 100%.
Absolutely. And I think some of it, and again, I referenced that the great podcast that you and I both listen to. I do understand that. Like she mentions, you have to remember too, some of these people they felt like they were crusaders. They were protecting children, but you can get blinded by that.
100%.
You know, and when it comes to cops, and God knows I got plenty of things I'd like to say about police, but they can also be one-track minded.
Oh, yeah.
And by the way, it's not a surprise that you can find all the police and all the judges that put away the West Memphis 3 who to this day will tell you they did it. I don't give a shit what they say.
Right.
They did it.
Right.
Well, of course they did it. You have to believe they did it because you never found anyone else. You'd never looked at anybody else, and you put your whole life on the fact that these 3 kids did it.
They don't also want to admit that they were wrong.
Of course not.
Right.
You can't admit you're wrong because, by the way, neither did the state of Arkansas when they let them out.
Right.
You know, for those who may not know, all 3 of these guys have been released. And the reason why is because, once again, they were going to get another appeal. And this one looked real good. And the state of Arkansas essentially made a deal with them that they had served long enough.
Yeah.
As long as they would admit that they did it, they could get out of prison.
Yeah.
So as somebody surmised, state of Arkansas, either one of 2 things has happened. Either you believe 3 boys murdered 7, 8-year-old boys in a brutal fashion, and 20 years, good enough. You're free to go.
Yeah.
Or you know you fucked up and you're trying to save face.
Yep.
It can't be either. It's one or the other.
Right.
And you know, and we all know what it really is.
Yeah.
And again, the lives that are destroyed. And it's not just the 3 boys that went away. No. It's the 3 boys that were murdered. It's the parents. And the ripple effect on that town.
The community.
Absolutely. All because we wanted to blind ourselves to this underground cabal that never fucking existed because somebody spray painted a fucking pentagram on a goddamn overpass.
Yeah.
You know, that last week had probably I fucked your sister on it. You know, who cares?
Yeah.
But they just lost their, and again, under the guise of protecting children, which is always, people want to protect children. We as a community want to protect our children.
Yes.
But there's always people who will exploit the shit out of the children thing,
and
who don't
so,
really give a fuck about kids.
That being said, there are things that came out positive, you know, much like Aaron already mentioned. Like, we did kind of take a look back and see, like, well, child abuse is a thing.
Is a real thing.
We have to approach it in a very different way.
Yes.
Where we're going to believe the children, but we also have to find out that what they're saying is real and honest. Right?
And that police and psychologists work together to understand how to question so that they can gather the information needed.
Yes. Yeah, so there were benefits.
There were.
You know, maybe accidental benefits, but
to some degree.
To what they are now and what it was, I would say they were positive benefits, you know.
We definitely see child abuse in a more, lack of a better word, positive way, which is to say how we approach it, how we take it,
yes.
how we try to solve it,
yes.
and understanding that we no longer go, well, it couldn't be the dad.
Exactly.
No.
Right.
It very well could be, or maybe it won't. We'll have to see.
Right.
But we definitely know it's not some secret guy driving down the street 9 times out of 10. It's the call is coming from within the house.
Yeah.
Right?
It's also not the devil.
No.
Right? It's not going to be the devil. It's never going to be the devil.
People do evil things. Evil is not a disease that you can catch.
Right.
People do evil deeds. Many of those people, though, do not believe their deeds are evil while they are doing them.
Right.
That doesn't mean they aren't. It's just to say, in their mind, they're the hero.
They're convinced.
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, and we also know, this is again through studies, most abusers have been abused themselves.
Yes.
And if they do not take care of that through therapy, through the healing process, and so on and so forth, they sometimes then act on others.
Right.
And this is the sad part about it, because now that we know that now, we can kind of stop it from time to time. But because we didn't know that, that's why it continued the way it did.
Yeah.
Well, another thing, I think, to your point of good things that came out of it, the idea that people became more comfortable in saying that it had happened to them.
Yes.
Because when they voiced it and they were able to speak it and the stigma was taken away from it.
Lifted, yeah.
It helps. That's how we heal it. That's how we really fix
100%,
it.
100%, yes. You find, because, you know, it's not so much that you find community amongst other abused people, but now you can go into a world where you're not the only one who this happened to,
yes.
you know? And if it happened, unfortunately, to these other people, well, maybe you can of course, commiserate, but also find a way out of this misery, right? That you've been carrying secretly.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like finding out I'm not the only one with cancer, and they have research that can help me battle this.
Right.
Great, awesome.
Right.
That's important. That's positive. That's a good thing.
Yeah, sometimes the only people that will be able to help you in any way is the people who have kind of been through what you've been through. You know,
that commonality does help. You know, it's a little harder to fully understand their process, their understanding if you haven't gone through it yourself, for sure.
Yeah, you know, so the fact that now these pockets of folks were able to either find each other and speak about it or what have you. Just find therapeutic help.
Absolutely. The healing process to begin.
Definitely a benefit to this, right? I think even famously the dolls, right? Of like, tell us on this doll where the stranger touched you. That's another kind of weird benefit of all that shit.
Well, again, it came from what real science, not this debunked bullshit that got put out, does through trial and error. You try these things, you find out, okay, and when they show that there's a positive thing. But, you know, again, like you said, there's just, to pretend that these are just simply stories, and it's like, oh, it's happened to like 4 or 5 people, and it happens. Like, no, remember, the FBI and most local police stations had occult groups.
Occult.
Where they looked, investigative groups.
Yeah.
Like, they believed they had to have a separate group.
Occult divisions.
Yeah, the occult division,
right?
Exactly. Although that'd be kind of cool. It's not the way they're doing it, but the way I would do the occult division.
If you look at like
quickly to the Ouija board, you know what I mean? That would be.
That's what like Constantine is
right,
about, right?
Absolutely. If that's the occult group, I'm joining. That's pretty cool. But yeah, it's just, you know, okay, how many funds were diverted into that bullshit that could have been used to do other things?
How many people got rich off of all this shit, right?
that again, that wonky guy at one point was worth well over millions of dollars for doing nothing more, showing up, telling shitty jokes that Gallagher told 5 years ago, and then going into bullshit stories. Yeah. And this guy became a multimillionaire. The Jack Chick, again, his Chick tracks are still selling to this day.
Yeah.
You know, these guys, except for, you know, certain, definitely how much money they make off of Michelle's book, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's still in publication.
Still.
I think they kind of fell out of the limelight.
They definitely, once debunked, they kind of went away, you know. Yeah. Many of these people, one way or the other, went away, but they're not gone.
Yeah,
like I said, that
book is still readily available.
And even try to make comebacks, little bits here and there, you know. Yeah. And it's just the idea that you can be debunked in the way they were, and that anyone would have you in their church is ridiculous. I don't understand it at all. But then again, and maybe this is kind of where it all culminates, which I think is really interesting. We were looking for this thing that we thought existed in the wrong place.
Yes.
Because it actually did fucking exist. It was called the Catholic Church.
The Catholic Church, yeah.
There was an underground cabal of people who knew that there were people fucking your children, and they would move them from parish to parish over and over, keep a nice little list. You know, Cardinal Mahoney out here, when he's talking about Ozzy being the Antichrist, happens to be one of the people who also knew where to move pedophiles.
Right.
The irony, not even the irony, the hypocrisy, that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
The hypocrisy. You know and I know how many fucking Catholic hierarchies heard about the satanic panic and went, that sounds great. Of course. I mean, it's almost like Area 51 where the government went, they think it's aliens.
Let's go
push
with
that story
so
we can keep doing the other things we're doing. The Catholic, there's no doubt in my mind, the Catholic Church knew, good, this will keep them off the fucking scent.
Well, I mean, even because historically it was the Catholics that conjured up the devil.
Yeah.
Right?
Again, yes. And again, they used it. I know whether there's evidence, of course, let's put it this way. Even by saying nothing, you're still lying, right?
Yes.
Even if you just didn't come out and go like, we know this. The spotlight thing hits, 2000, 2001, somewhere in there, right? With the thing with I just watched the movie actually this weekend. I can't remember the exact years, but you know, that blows the lid off the whole fucking thing. And you're just like, oh my God, this has been going on forever.
Yep.
By the way, interestingly enough, longer than the whole satanic panic, or at least as we know it. It was happening way before, and it happened way after at least this wave we're talking about went away. So even these people in QAnon who are looking for the Hollywood elite lizard people that are sucking the blood from my children when they scare them because it makes them younger, no, it's not the Hollywood elite. It's your priest.
Yes. Yeah.
That's who's doing it.
Yeah.
And that to me is just so upsetting because, again, I think you said this early on, your heart may have been in the right place, but you were looking in the wrong fucking spot, man.
Yeah.
Your MapQuest was way off, MapQuest. See how recent I am?
Because it's that fear that's driving you, right? It's just
instead of logic, instead of really looking for the real predator and what a predator looks like.
They could. I'm going to be somewhat forgiving to religious folks right now. You can have your faith.
Absolutely.
But when the fear starts taking over and you're driven mainly by that,
yes,
that's the harmful stuff.
Right? And that goes for all of us. Whether faith or
all of us.
Try look, and I understand. Again, I want to say this too, and I know you think the same. I get it. We're talking about children here. Sure. We're talking about them being abused. Yeah. We're talking about them being hurt by adults. I get it. I understand that fear. You have a nephew. I have children. Yeah. Believe me, I understand the leap of faith sometimes it takes to leave your children with adults and understand that I have to trust this person. But part of that is also, let's be honest, and of course it happens in religious families, is the discussions that don't get had because it's uncomfortable. I don't want to think about it or talk about it. So I don't say to my children, my children were very young. My wife and I both had that discussion with all of them. No one touches you there.
Yeah.
No one. Okay? Only person other than your mom or your dad is a doctor, and they had better do it with your mom and dad present in the room. Otherwise, nobody touches you down there. And anyone who does, you come tell mom and dad, and we will take care of it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying that was a great conversation I couldn't wait to have with my kids, but it was a necessary one.
Sure.
You know, no different than when they got older and we told them, adults do not need your help or they don't need your fucking directions. So if they ask for it, fucking run.
Well, even on that same tip, like people, when they have kids, you know, and I know I don't have.
No. But
I don't
again,
have children.
I didn't do heroin, but I know it's not bad for me. So go ahead.
Well, I know even having a simple conversation like the birds and the bees.
Yes,
it's a difficult conversation to have. But it's one that can certainly be had if you approach it with a little bit more logic.
Yes.
You know, if you're a little bit more honest about it. Instead of just saying, no, a crane magically brings a fucking baby, right?
Right.
Somehow God knows that your mama loves your papa, and then you appear.
Even real studies will show you, if you only teach abstinence, there's a higher rate of STDs, teenage pregnancies, than if you sit them down and you pass out a condom and you say, look, I'm not, by the way, if condoms made sure you had sex, then somebody didn't tell me. That's for sure. Yes. Okay? I don't remember any girl ever going like, wait, you have a condom. Now I want to fuck you. Right. Believe me, it never happened.
Well, it's funny that this comes up because recently I saw online on one of the big social medias, parents were outraged that their children got sent home with pamphlets with, visual reproductions of like women's genitalia, men's genitalia.
Right.
But it's sex education. Right.
And science, by the way.
And science.
These are human being anatomy. It's all
right. Well, 100, yeah. But like the captions on there, like, I didn't agree for my children to learn this. But like you said, it's science.
Right.
And it's sex education. They're not saying, hey, kids, go do all this horrible shit.
Right.
This is what happens.
Nor is it, hey, kids, this is the missionary position. Let me show you.
Nothing like that.
No.
Right? I mean, our parents in the 70s had to buy books called The Joy of Sex because they were so fucking uneducated.
Yes.
Right? It's just like, come on, folks. Like, you have to take a step back and be like, okay, maybe I'm scared, but is that fear a rational fear?
Right.
Or is it just me getting bent out of shape?
Don't let it rule your life.
Don't let it rule your life.
Do it.
Right.
The benefits of those discussions, whether they are child abuse, whether they are sex, the benefits of those discussions far outweigh the uncomfortableness of them. Right. I can attest to it as a parent. I promise you. It's the peace of mind that I had as a parent, knowing that I had these discussions with my children, far outweighed. Of course it was fucking uneasy. You know,
sure.
My children that live with me still are like 25, 26, something like that. I don't know. I don't get presents for their birthdays. What the fuck do I care? Either way, it's like we watch movies and when there's a sex scene in it, I'm still fucking uncomfortable sitting there with my children while they're going at it and a sex scene. Yeah. I didn't say I enjoyed it, but I understood it had to be done. Sure. I didn't enjoy when my kids got inoculated. It was sad to watch them scream and yell and cry like babies because they were getting needles stuck in them. Right. But I understood it needed to get done. Yeah. It hurt, it sucked, but there's a lot of parts of life that are that way.
Yeah.
And again, they let fear run, and then you have people who, more importantly, fed that fear for their own benefit.
Yes.
Not because they cared about kids, not because they cared about a satanic cult, none of that shit. They profited from it. That's it.
They gained.
That's all it was. And the repercussions of what people like Melissa Remembers and Wonky and the Chick Tracks and all this other bullshit that went on during this time. Even, quite frankly, the Geraldos, the Oprahs that would put these people on.
Yeah.
I mean, there is 2020 clips where they are interviewing these people, and they are even well, so he says, well, then if you know it's so he says, why do you even have him on?
Right.
Why are you having this person? If you're doing real news, then why are you having this person on?
Yeah.
You have a wackadoo. You know he's a wackadoo, but it sells, baby. Yeah. Look at the ratings. And people got hurt because of this. Real people who did nothing. And that to me, and by the way, while you were, much like I said in the West Memphis 3, while you were focused to the left the entire time thinking it was this, there's a thing happening over here to the right that is literally happening that you are saying you're fighting against, but you're not paying attention to it.
That is doing the thing.
And did nothing about it for years. Yeah. And even when they actually did get caught, the Catholic Church, has anything really happened to them?
No. They got hidden and moved around.
Yes. Right? And then they paid people off, and they're still existing today, and there are still people who would call themselves Catholics, which I don't understand. Maybe it's just my brain. Fine. I'm not hurtful to them. It just feels weird. If I found out I belonged to an organization that hid child predators, I don't know that I'd want to be part of that organization anymore. Whatever they may be. Right. Whether it be Boy Scouts, whether it be fucking, there's another place it was happening in, believe me, I was in Boy Scouts and I am Catholic, and neither one. I thought I was a good-looking kid. But, I mean, weirdly, it's like, these are happening right there in the places you thought you could trust the most.
Yes. And that's,
which, by the way, this is what predators go for.
Yes, they get it. Yeah, I mean,
they know where to shop, if you will.
Right. Yeah. So I think we here at the rehearsal room headquarters, one thing we do like to promote is obviously fear is going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. Fear is going to be an inevitability of life. But I think one of the main things, and without getting too preachy about this, is just make sure that you understand what your fear is.
Yes.
Right?
Investigate. Look into these things.
Look into it. Do some research. And I don't mean do your Google
No. I know that phrase has now suddenly become something else.
Of course.
I know what you mean.
Yeah,
don't take it just from one source because the guy showed up to your church, said it one time, and you go, well, it must be truth.
Right. Sometimes the truth, while it doesn't make sense to you, it will fall into a logical place.
Yeah.
And you have to look for it. I know it's another hurdle of life, but it's going to be one that's the most beneficial in the end, I think, because you'll end up protecting yourself, your family.
There it is.
Right.
Your children, your community, and on and on and on.
Yeah. And then you get out of this cycle of falling into a moral panic.
There it is.
Which this country has been victim to for many, many decades, hundreds of years at this point.
And again, and we were talking earlier, even early rock and roll, right? It's it's of the devil.
Right.
It's of the devil.
It's of the devil.
Now, again, it also hid things like racism and homophobia. Yeah. They could use the devil once again to also say, I don't want my kids playing with black people.
The eternal bad guy.
Absolutely. Right. And this continues. They will, and blaming the devil is the easiest thing because you can't arrest him. He seems to be.
It's the idea.
Right. Exactly. It's this amorphous thing that you can blame everything on, and you really can't. It's also weird because you go, and again, I'm taking this from that podcast because she made such a great point. If you believe in the devil, then you must believe in God.
Right.
And if God is more powerful than the devil, well, then I don't understand either A, he's allowing this to happen, which, whoa, what the hell, God?
Right.
Or two, well, then God will put a stop to it, right? Because he's more powerful than the devil.
Yeah.
And it just, but again, and I don't mean this to be demeaning, these are logical thoughts made by logical people, but the people who are doing this aren't using logic. They're using fear. Combined with faith.
Yes.
And listen, we are all susceptible to those things, by the way, in many different ways. Yeah. And I'm not demeaning it. It's just to say this is what they're preying on. And more importantly, when you have shysters that come along like these people, these fucking snake oil salesmen, as you said earlier, these shitty humans that use it for their own financial benefit.
Yeah.
That's some really scumbag shit to do.
Yeah.
And it destroyed a time in our country in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and unfortunately it happens. I'll say maybe tangentially the war on terrorism.
Oh,
kind of. Because you can't really pinpoint what terrorism was,
Right.
but they blanket covered a whole group of people, right?
Well, brown, and they live over there.
Yeah, right. It's a constant war over there. That must be it.
Even though the country that did it, we didn't invade, but that's a whole other thing. But yes, again,
Sign up for our Patreon for that one. Right?
right. Well, the eternal boogeyman.
Yes,
whatever shape he has to take, Satan, terrorism,
yes.
homosexuality, whatever group is going against it. If we just call it this thing, and we scare the shit out of you, thinking, I mean, again, not to go off on another thing, but it's part of that same thing. Like, do yourselves a favor, people. Like, and this isn't just in America too. There's an English ad that was very back in the day. When the AIDS scare comes.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the things that Christian groups were putting out, like essentially your family will be infected and you will die in the next 2 years if we don't do something about getting rid of these homosexuals and their disease that they deserve because it's punishment from God. Yeah. Like, wow, out loud. Not even getting into the government not really doing anything about it for many years. But, this tied into it because, again, it was a panic set in to scare you thinking the homosexuals are coming for your children.
Yeah. Yeah.
Their agenda, another great buzzword
That's
like to use.
That's another one, yeah. And it comes up a lot. Moral panics still happen, like I mentioned. We just have to be a little bit more aware, more on guard.
Yes.
And it really does suck that that's what life has to be. But I think in the end, if we're a little bit more vigilant as to where our information comes from, and we know how to kind of filter out the more fantastical parts of what's reality out there now, we'll end up in a better place. I really do think that.
I'm with you.
And I do think that satanic panics, whether they happen before, can ultimately and eventually come to an end. But we just kind of got to watch out for what we're
Let's hope we learn something from them.
Yeah.
Positively.
Yeah. And so all that being said, what are you watching?
So let's see. Quite a few things. As I mentioned, I was telling my wife that we were going to be recording this, so I was kind of going into certain things, and I mentioned Spotlight, the movie. Yeah. Pretty sure she's seen it, but she swore she didn't. So, then we're watching it because it's a fucking great movie. Watch that. Love that. It's a fantastic film, and again, very sad to see it takes this community to hide them. It's not just the Catholic Church. Yeah. The collusion of many others outside of it's just amazing. And the line that I love that you hear a couple times is just like, do you know how much good this church has done for this city? Really? So it's worth sacrificing a few thousand kids?
Which is something that will be said many times over in many other situations, right?
It's just a disgusting thing to say.
Collateral damage.
You're right. Hey.
Right.
So a couple kids get molested. Look at the park across the street that the Catholic Church paid for. Right. Yeah, and the millions of dollars they sit on that they could be taking care of homelessness.
Yeah.
So don't give me that. And I think a lot of that also comes from their own guilt. They have to justify it in some way. The people who did collude or benefited from, even if they weren't part of the actual crime itself, But great movie. I would definitely recommend it. Another one, I hadn't seen it in a while, is All the Money in the World. It tells the story of the Getty kid, that when he gets, J. Paul Getty, even by today's standards, at one point was the world's richest man, first billionaire. His grandson is kidnapped while in Italy, and his mother, who is now divorced from his father, it's all about, based on true story, he gets kidnapped. They want a ransom of $17 million, and because J. Paul Getty is a absolute piece of shit human being, he wants to negotiate, including when they send a piece of his ear.
Wow.
Yeah, J. Paul Getty, absolute hunk of shit human being. Yeah. Though I will say, if you love art, he's the greatest. He's kind of like Hitler with dogs. His is art. The art collection this man has is amazing. If you make it out to L.A., one of the things I would definitely recommend to anyone, including if you live here, the J. Paul Getty Museum.
Oh, yeah.
Unbelievable. It is amazing. And all of it is pretty much his. 99.9% of the shit that's in the main exhibits was in his house. And he owned it.
Those exhibits get cycled out.
Yeah.
And even what gets replaced is his.
Well, as one guy said, because at the time they had, who's the guy, the water lilies? What's his name? Is that the guy who cut his ear off?
Van Gogh.
Van Gogh. The Louvre borrows their Van Goghs.
Yeah.
So, tell you, good movie. Very good one. Let's see. Another one that I watched. Just watched it last night, actually. September 5th. Very interesting movie. It tells the story of the hostage situation at the, I think, 72 Olympics in Munich. But it tells it from the perspective of ABC's Wide World of Sports that was able to cover it live because they were the only one with the live feed. And very disgusting watch, to be honest with you, of nobody seemed to give a shit about the people. It was about, again, bleeds it leads. Let's be exclusive was more important than anything else. And it's just very interesting to see, to say the least. And it's just one of those historical things. I'm always interested in that. But it's a good movie. I think it's on Amazon right now.
Okay.
The other one that I got back into it mainly because the rehearsal ended and I just needed some more Nathan Fielder. I went back and started doing Nathan For You. I just fucking love that show.
Yeah.
The man's just a fucking genius. The things this guy pulls off, I don't know how he does it. And lastly, my wife and I last weekend went and saw Sinners.
Nice.
Yeah. Really good movie. Hype being whatever it is. I try never to get too involved in that. I don't really care one way or the other. Try not to also absorb it so it doesn't affect how I see it, kind of thing. I think for the most part, the hype is definitely it's due. It's a very good movie, very interesting. The horror aspect of it is also the things I love about a good horror movie. It's telling other tales by using horror to talk about other things.
So I've read up a bit on this movie. One of the things that was mentioned was that it's kind of like two movies in one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like my son, then again, I love the kid to death, but I don't know if there's anything he likes. He felt that way. It's like, I love the movie, and then all of a sudden the vampires show up, and now it's a vampire movie.
Gotcha. Okay. I haven't checked that out yet. I'm hoping to within the next couple of days.
I think one of the things that I love about this movie is what I like about a lot of other movies. I'm always a little bit on the fence when it comes to what am I reading into a movie as opposed to what they're trying to tell. I'm always a little like, am I reading into that a little too much? This one, I definitely don't think I'm reading into too much. They're trying to tell other things aside from just a cool vampire action film.
I do know, just from hearing interviews with the Ryan Coogler, that there is a set story that he wants to get across.
No doubt. And again, you feel that. But there are also little things that happen here and there that you could take one way or the other, or maybe mean absolutely nothing.
Gotcha.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, I watched a little like, we're going to tell you everything. And there were things I was like, wow, I would have never, his pocket square runs to the right. That means, what? Are we sure about that? I don't know.
I like that. I mean, I like that.
I love that
stuff like
absolutely.
That, right?
If those things are real, for sure. But I also don't want to watch The Shining because I think he's telling me that he faked the moon landing. You know what I'm saying? Let's make sure we're watching the same film here.
Yeah.
I thought Michael B. Jordan was really good in it, playing twins. And you never mistake one for the other. The subtle things he does, you always remember who's who. And I think that's a tough one. But again, really good.
Cool.
I think another reason the hype is so big too is I think it's refreshing for some people who are a little more cynical about movies nowadays that it's not a superhero movie and it's not a part 7 of something.
Right.
Yeah. So it's new.
It's not like IP or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
New, original. Oh man, it was nice to sit down and watch something I had never seen before, kind of thing.
Okay, cool.
But yeah,
I'm actually looking forward to.
I'm looking forward to you seeing it too because I'd really like to discuss it more with you because I think it hits on some themes that I think you'll very much enjoy. But
cool.
Yeah, that's it. How about yourself?
So I've been kind of going back and kind of digging into comfort movies. The actor that played Rain in this movie recently passed away. So rest in peace to him. His representation of Rain in the movie Big Trouble in Little China was one that inspired side stories that never happened,
Right.
But Big Trouble in Little China, I jumped into that again.
Right
one of
on.
my absolute favorite
It's
movies.
so good.
Like I don't think that there is a better popcorn movie. It's everything rolled into one. It's action, it's drama, it's thriller, and
comedy.
Comedy, a little bit of horror in there,
it,
right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Fantasy and
Absolutely.
all this shit. Like
yes.
Just the lore that it inspires is far out, right? And it's it's Kurt Russell, John Carpenter.
I'm in.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like that pairing alone.
Well, and it goes on that list of movies that you and I loved as a kid, had no idea of what they were thought of outside of HBO and you and I watching them. Yeah. And then you grow up to find out, wait, this was a flop? Why was this a flop?
Exactly, right? Like
why I don't understand why this was a flop, you know?
So I do know that for a long time, a sequel was planned and then a prequel was planned. And
Okay.
I think there was a prequel, maybe comic book that was put out.
Oh, shit.
But another thing that was supposedly in the works was a independent movie on just the 3 storms.
Oh, that would have been cool,
right?
Well, like, I mean, you feel like you've been dropped in the middle of something.
Yeah.
So you'd love to know, where did it start? Where is it gonna kind of, you know? Yeah.
Well, the fact that these 3 characters are held in so much reverence.
Oh yeah.
Right? And people in the modern time of that movie are aware of their history.
Yeah. Right.
How did they begin? How did they get these powers? And who are they?
Well, and there's no doubt the lightning guy is Raiden from.
I mean, if
Kombat,
that's
right?
not the template for Raiden, come on.
I mean,
right?
come on. You know?
Yeah,
I mean, you know, yeah. No,
fucking movie rules.
Yes.
So I watched that one.
Also, in Coming to America, I forgot about that until I was looking him up. Or not coming to Golden Child.
Golden Child.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'd forgotten that. I was
yeah.
like, oh, that's right, Golden Child.
Yeah, Golden Child is another great movie that I.
Tommy Tong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But the other movie that I watched was Escape from New York.
Nice.
Which apparently was Kurt Russell trying to break out of his Disney image.
It makes sense. I mean, if you think about it, yeah. I mean, well, he certainly did.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Like,
that was the opposite of anything he did. Disney
shed it behind.
Yeah,
as a snake would do, right?
Yes.
But yeah, so Escape from New York is so fucking good.
It is.
Just
Snake
so
Plissken is one of the
dreary.
great movie characters all time.
All time.
The anti-hero, that's
yeah.
one of the best anti-heroes ever.
Definitely, yeah. So I took that in, and I took another John Carpenter movie in, which, you know, kind of a staple at this point for a lot of people, but I did watch the first Halloween.
Okay.
It's so good. Like, it's so much ambiance. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
Like, of course, it's got the Michael Myers,
Sure,
and,
sure,
you know,
sure.
everything else and all that, but like, when you're world building,
Yeah.
to the point that he did in this movie,
Sure.
like, we want to live in Haddonfield, you know.
Yeah, I got you.
We want to recognize this as a real place.
I got you.
And eventually, if you are a fan of the series or the character or Laurie Strode, even, you believe that Haddonfield is a real place somewhere, right? And
well, it's such a game changer of a movie. I mean, there's before Halloween and after.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it influenced everything that came after it.
Yeah,
You know, in so many ways.
So then, I had to watch one of the other Russell and Carpenter team ups, which was The Thing. Which another great fucking movie.
And again, another one that did nothing when it came out, and then became this huge cult classic that everyone now agrees, including people who shat on it as critics.
Yeah.
Now we all go back. Wait a minute, no, this is an absolute masterpiece.
Master fucking piece. Yeah. So The Thing is a remake from The Thing from Another World, which was in the 50s, a black and white movie, and this one has Kurt Russell as MacReady with one of the most amazing hats ever in cinema, right? And one of the most killer beards.
Yeah,
right?
fuck yeah. Brimley's in it, right?
Yeah, Wilford Brimley.
And
I mean,
what's the guy? The black guy. Fuck. I know. I feel like because he brings it back in They Live. He's the voice of Spawn. You know, the dad in Something About Mary.
Something About Mary. Yeah.
I mean, you guy's been in a million things.
He's awesome.
He's an amazing actor.
What is his fucking name?
I'd have to look it up.
I'm gonna fucking hate myself.
Yeah, and as soon as I hear it, I'm gonna be like, how did I not? It's not like it's not a Benedict Cumberbatch or some
no,
weird fucking name, dude.
Yeah.
It's, you know, but
we're assholes for forgetting.
Yes,
but anyways,
we are, because he should always be remembered.
Yes. So The Thing is such a fucking great movie.
It really is.
And that's another one where it's Carpenter building the ambiance through this simple setting,
dude.
Right?
Yes.
And you have fucking Ennio Morricone soundtrack, which just hits fucking perfectly.
The paranoia of it all.
Right. The isolation.
Yes.
Right. You feel you almost feel like you're being like compressed by the snow, but at the same time, it's like it's so open that you could actually escape.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. It's like you're in this vast Arctic wilderness, which you can get thousands of miles away, but good luck.
Good luck. Yeah, exactly.
You know,
yeah.
You have all the space in the world and you can't use any of it, and you're stuck in this one little spot. And by the way, any one of us could be the alien.
Any one of us, yeah.
And we don't have a fucking... It's just... By the way, Keith David.
Keith David.
An
There you go. Thank you
amazing
so much.
actor.
There you go.
If you look at his IMDb, I promise you he's been in something you've seen.
You love at least 5 of the things he's been
Oh,
in,
there's
right?
just no doubt. I mean, the guy's just... I mean, this is a classically trained fucking Shakespearean act. Like, I remember reading about it when he does They Live, you know?
Yeah.
And it was like, here he is on the set with Roddy
Piper.
with Roddy Piper, and they got to fight, and he's like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yep.
You know, I'm a classically trained actor, but great guy. Keith David. Fantastic.
David,
And
yes. Thank you. Yeah.
The thing is, like, it's... You know, it really is like this genius piece that was so ahead of its time. No wonder nobody got it when it came out. You know?
Yeah, and the fact that it's held, you know, in the high praise it is to date, you know, it really speaks for Carpenter's movie making abilities.
No doubt.
You know, because he's a person who I don't want to call it guerrilla movie making, but he did stuff kind of by the seat of his pants.
Oh, for sure.
He took a lot of chances
Yes.
with the story, with the actors.
Yes.
And we got some of the greatest movies we could ever hope for.
Oh,
right?
God, yeah.
Yeah. So, what have you been listening to?
I actually went down a pretty big hip hop hole this week, and just I don't know, just that's all I was kind of in the mood for. So I was listening to a lot of that. Raekwon the Chef's Cuban Link album, Clear Soul Forces, Detroit Revolution, kind of like a Detroit version of The Far Side. Really dig that album. Most Def's, but Black on both sides. Freddie Gibbs' album Alfredo, I think it was his 5th year anniversary. I saw that, so I thought, well, that's any good excuse to pop that on. It's a him with The Alchemist, which is one of my favorite DJs or producers, however they're calling them now. Another one that I went down mainly because Madlib is probably my favorite of all hip hop producers. An album called The Professionals. It's him with a rapper named Ono. There's some guests and stuff like that. Fucking love that record. I was listening to that one.
Nice.
Yeah, and Youth Code. I was really I like them. They just put out a new EP I think a couple weeks ago. I've been listening to that quite a bit. I just keep slipping in my mind because it's just an EP, so you get like 6 songs, and you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, every time I go back to it, really dig it. I like that one a lot. I went down. I did some more Crowbar. That one just there? Yeah, no, it was just hitting the spot, man. And then it was. I also continued with my Dwight Yoakam rabbit hole, and then it was really weird. I found this every now and again. You know, Facebook does the "Here's your memories," you know. And I was like, oh, what's this one? It was my favorite albums of, like, I want to say 2001 or something like that. And I thought, oh, wow, let's take a look at that. Let's see what I was kind of listening to in 2001. I felt pretty good because the majority of it was stuff I still very much like and very much own. And it was a few I was like, oh, yeah, I remember liking that for a couple seconds. You know, but came across one that I was like, oh, shit, I hadn't heard that in so long. Idris, I wrote it down because I want to make sure. Archamore, Idris Archamore, but the group is called the Pyramids. I guess this group has been back since the 70s, and then he kind of went on his own, and then he brought them back together for this album called Shaman. Huh. Some Afro-Cuban stuff in there. It's jazz, ultimately. I would say if you're into stuff like Bitches Brew, that 70s era, maybe Weather Report kind of stuff, kind of jazz, but a little more, not as psychedelic as maybe Bitches Brew. Okay. I would definitely recommend it. Really cool. Some, it's kind of, there's some violin in it, which is not necessarily an instrument you hear in a lot of jazz per se.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But just like really cool, like you can get lost in it. I mean, some songs, you're talking 10-minute songs. I mean, it's a pretty long album, but you can get real lost in it. And it's just one of those things. I was like, oh, wow. I don't even remember the last time I heard that. And I just threw it on. It was like, holy crap. You know? But yeah, that one was really good. And then I just started going down on my way here. Unfortunately, you might hear it in the car, but I've been going down a little Steely Dan.
Oh,
yeah. So, going down that little rabbit hole a little bit. So, yeah, other than that, again, staples that occasionally will come around. I think it was a little bit Buck Owens. I did that, but
nice.
Yeah. How about yourself?
So kind of weird mixture this time around. There's a band from Israel called Miskavilian.
Okay.
Kind of it is doom, stoner, sludge, whatever,
okay.
what have you. but they do a lot of vocalization with the throat singing.
Oh shit! Okay.
Yeah, so it's really good. The music is heavy.
Right on.
They mix up that throat singing in there in a way that I really enjoy.
Okay.
Makes it sound almost as if FERPA. Do you know them?
No.
They're a Russian group, just nothing but throat singers.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But like if they were placed in a more kind of a standard metal band.
Okay.
But it's really good. Miss
that sounds
Cavilian.
fucking cool,
Yeah,
man.
it's really fucking awesome. And I think the album's called something, and the Monks played rock and roll. Right? It's fucking cool shit, right?
All right.
And then I listened to this band that is comprised of a husband and wife team. The band is called Azel.
Okay.
Azell, I believe.
Okay.
And it's just fucking disgusting sludge, doomy stuff.
Okay.
Just heavy tones, which I'm a big fan of.
Yeah.
The tone, right?
Yeah, tell me.
Big cavernous drums.
Fuck yeah.
And it's a 2-piece.
Okay.
So the fact that it sounds this massive and
Yeah.
it's just 2 people is impressive as all
Like a
hell.
Jucifer almost.
Yeah, well, this is honestly just because I don't know if it's just the modern way of mixing and mastering.
Sure.
It sounds massive.
Oh, gotcha.
Like massive.
Right
massive. Where I know Jucifer
Yeah.
live
Yeah.
is a massive thing.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like I've been witness
Yes.
to this.
The earplugs, they do nothing.
Yeah, exactly, right? So Azel, Miss Cavilian, and then I wandered into kind of like a dark ambient mood.
Nice. Now you're talking
So I
about
was
language.
I was listening to this group called Forndom.
Okay.
I don't know what their albums are called because
Okay.
they have the different language. That,
Sure.
You know, and I could barely speak English as it is. But Forndom was fucking refreshing, just kind of reset, you know.
Nice.
like,
Yeah.
get
Palate cleanser.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And when they stopped, weirdly enough, Spotify, who I know is the devil and one of the moral panics. So, getting back to that.
They're
you know,
molesting my ears.
yeah, right. They suggested this other band that I really, really enjoyed. Now I'm gonna butcher this name, and I apologize to everybody who might listen to this. But Desi Durley Maginus. yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I don't know. My phone says a whole different other thing.
No, I
but,
can't wait for when Spotify puts up what you just said.
You know, it's their song titles are in English.
Okay.
But it is dark ambient. Like it is very ambient and in some places very dark.
Actually, I think I do. DEIS.
DSI
Yeah.
That's Durley.
Yeah, I have.
Maginus or
I
something.
feel
like
like I might. Like I'm picturing it. I'm sure Last FM has probably suggested it to me.
I
a few
would
times.
not be surprised if you've heard of this band because every dark ambient playlist that I've looked on,
Yeah.
they make an appearance.
Yeah. Okay.
know?
Yeah.
But yeah, they have some
Yeah.
really good albums out
Right on.
there. A lot of really good solitary tracks, but
Nice.
they've been kind of taking over my ear holes
Right
for
on.
this past week.
Right on.
But yeah, that was pretty much it, folks. Again, just to kind of reiterate what we went through in the beginning, make sure you pay attention to what you're taking in when it comes to something that might scare you or cause a bigger fear, especially if it's something that you feel is threatening to you. We, of course, take abuse very seriously.
Absolutely.
The fact that there are many venues of getting help, and something that I would suggest to many others, because I have been somebody who's been helped in this manner, is get therapy
Yes.
if it calls for it, because that will help you out in the long run. And we want everybody to be as good as they can be so that we can enjoy each other in this lifetime.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next time.
Take it easy.
Hey, folks. Thank you so much for checking out the rehearsal room. We super appreciate you spending time with us. If you have any questions, comments, or want to yell at us for any of the takes we've expressed in any of these episodes, you can contact us by emailing us at therehearsalroompod@gmail.com. All one word, therehearsalroompod@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and now on Blue Sky. Also, if you have any recommendations for any movies or any bands you might want us to check out and give a listen to, feel free to send those in. We always accept submissions. Or if you have any shows coming up that you feel we might be interested in checking out, let us know and we'll give you guys a shout out. But thank you for checking us out, and we'll catch you next time.